because I see San Mateo, San Jose, lots of other places. Many of the places where people signed up from were in California, though not all. Ooh, it's so fast. Wow. Thank you for joining us. All right, it is 4 and I'm actually going to stop. Do we have, Phyllis, you're still on the waiting room?
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, so I am going to start. And I just want to say thank you everyone for joining. Most of you are so familiar with Zoom, I'm sure you're sick of it, but if you happen to be a Google Meets person, this is for you, or Teams. I just want to make sure you know how to do everything you need to do today. We are recording, it's also being live streamed to YouTube, but just so that you know how to turn your camera and everything on and off, etc. Yes, Rachel, that would be great. Okay. Also this, so that you know, in case you are not a Zoom person, you can make it so that you see the presenter and of course what they're presenting. You can select these different options. So just want to make sure that you know about that. And also gallery view versus speaker view. I know this is Zoom 101 for those of you who are used to using it, but just in case. And you can change that anytime you want. Okay, so a couple of norms before we get started. Please stay muted during the panelist presentations. And also please keep your cameras off during the presentation so we just have the panelist visible. Use the chat box. You can add comments or ask questions of anyone else during the presentation, that's fine. You're gonna go into a breakout session after the panelist presentations in which you will be able to ask the panelists follow-up questions. And the panel presentation is being recorded. Participants are not recorded, so you all are not recorded. The breakout room discussions are not recorded. You will get a link to the recording afterward. You will also get the slides, other material, and I will include in that a link if you need to get a letter saying that you attended. I can also provide that. Okay. All right. And if you need remote captioning, you can click the CC on your control bar. The captioner will use, will go, oh, sorry, the captioner corrected me. This may be possible. If you are a person who wanted the captioner to go with you to the breakout rooms, I'm going to ask you when we go to the first breakout room to please stay. It says live stream is not running on YouTube. I do not know why that is the case. Once the panelist presentations start, I guess I will try to fix that and see what's happening. Okay, so this is who we are, a couple of resources at UC Berkeley. The first is who is actually doing this event today. So I am part of a collaborative of 13 programs called the Professional Development Providers at UC Berkeley. My name is Shane Carter. I'm the program coordinator for an office called Arias. I usually work on programs related to international topics. This workshop was put together by members of PDP. So our group includes the subject matter projects in California, the College and Career Academy Support Network, CASN, the Center for Cities and Schools, and several others. And on our website, which you'll have access to, you can see others. So that's us. And then we are associated with this other thing called 21 CSLA, which is also cited at Berkeley and other places. That stands for the 21st Century California School Leadership Academy. It's newly created. It includes a state center and regional agencies across the state. So wherever you are in California, you are part of one of these 7 regions that offers programming. And assuming that you work at a qualifying school or district, teacher leaders and administrators can attend those programs for free. You can find a map showing your region and linking to the regional offices. Again, like I said, you'll get the slide deck. The current programs going on right now are, for example, there's one on embedding social emotional learning practices in online pedagogy. There's one that I'm working on, Rachel Reinhardt with, and Nancy and a couple of other people who are on here, Sarah Pedamante, on called Talking as Learning, Fostering Communication, Community, and Curiosity in the Online Environment. And you'll get the link to that. I think it might be possible to still join that one. There are two coming up. One is Anti-Racist Inquiry into Math and Writing Instruction. And the other one is called Creating Equitable Access to Engaged Learning through Student Cohorts. That's a mouthful, but this is about small cohorts. So anyone who's interested, who's in our region, should apply. You'll have the link to that. Okay, that was a mouthful. All right. Are we set? I just heard an audio, come on. So today's program here that you see the timeline for, the agenda for, I mean, is the result of conversations among our group. And you will see us as we're moving through the breakout rooms. So it's our PDP group and teachers across the country over the past few weeks. And so I also would like to mention in this, it's not just us in conversation, but the California Reading and Literature Project a few weeks ago hosted an elementary focused teacher event just a couple of weeks ago. And that was really the direct inspiration for this event. And the link to the recording for that event will also be included in the follow-up materials. So if, for example, you're an elementary school teacher, you might find that useful and interesting. Okay, so today we're going to have this intro, which I am doing right now, awkwardly. I'm sorry, I'm reading 50 different things on my screen at the same time. Then from 4:10 to 4:45, you're going to have these basic hybrid how-tos, presentations by your teaching colleagues. From 4:45 to 5:05-ish, about 20 minutes, you'll have a breakout session where you get to go and ask direct questions of the presenters. After that, we're going to bring you back and send you, you're going to choose where you want to go, but we've set up breakout rooms for subject area meetings so that you can talk to other people who are teaching at your same age level or subject area. And then in the end, the last 10 minutes, we're going to reconvene and debrief. And I want to say, please make sure that, oh, thank you for fixing the YouTube link. Please make sure that if you are at all able, that you come back for that last 10 minutes so that we can collect what you have learned, so that we can create a shared document. So if you come back for that last 10 minutes, we'll be able to collect all of that stuff and share it back to you as part of what we send out to you on Wednesday. All right. So this is not universal terminology, but to help us communicate today, I just want to talk about a couple of ways of describing hybrid models. So one, which many of you are about to enter into, is concurrent, meaning you've got some students who attend face-to-face while the rest are online. Students rotate on different days between these, and you have some students who are only attending virtually. And then on another extreme, you have face-to-face and asynchronous, where some students are face-to-face while the rest do asynchronous work on a rotating schedule. And some students are maybe separate in all virtual classes. In other words, the two extremes here have to do with who is in your room at the same time, but there are many variations on this, as you probably know right now. And in both cases, you have challenges with logistics, you have challenges with tech, you have challenges with student engagement, safe student interaction with each other, et cetera. But in order for us to have some language to talk about today, I want you to think about concurrent versus face-to-face and asynchronous. And lastly, here about your goals. I want to go back what probably feels like a million years ago to the spring. So in the spring, I co-hosted an online event for teachers from around the world. And there were 40 different countries represented in this meeting of teachers. There were a couple hundred people, and they were discussing their experiences teaching during a pandemic. And so this is back before all of you had kind of figured out how to do this thing online, and you were just thrown into that at that moment. And teachers in this meeting described the problem of being in virtual space as feeling like they had lost the ability to connect with their students and foster connections. And they kind of collectively realized that this building of relationships that happens normally in the course of a classroom, a regular face-to-face classroom, wasn't just a side thing that happens in school. It was probably their most powerful teaching tool, and that had just been taken away from them. And they were all struggling with this feeling of just like true feelings of failure, that they were not doing their job, and incredible frustration trying to figure out what this new virtual world was that they were expected to work in. So I know you know this. I just want to remind you of what that sudden shift felt like as you're about to make this next one, because you've been working all this time on ways to establish relationships in virtual space, right? And so as you're going back into hybrid teaching, keep that front and center in your mind, right? This was not a thing that you liked, that you lost. It was a tool that you used for teaching. And that's what went away. And that's got to be one of your primary goals going back. And so keep reminding yourself that relationships and community are essential teaching tools, not extras. And so I want that to be the context within which you hear what you're about to hear. Okay, so you've got minimizing COVID risk in school, obviously, and then your first goal there is fostering those social interactions because it's a tool, not because it's a nice thing. Okay. And I'm just going to leave this for one brief moment. I know I'm a little bit late starting, but as you are thinking about this and listening, I want you to think for yourself about your assets and parameters, because everyone has a different circumstance that you're going to be thinking about what you hear, you know, in the context of sorry, I can't say that. You're going to have a different context in which you're interpreting what you hear. So as you're hearing this, think about what is the size and shape of your classroom? What kind of flexibility do you have physically? Do you have access to outdoor space? That's more physical flexibility. What tech tools do you have? What other tools do you have? Because it's not all about technology. Will your students have computers in the classroom? Will all of them have computers, or some of them, or none of them? And then finally, if they do, how many people can actually be on a Zoom or Google Meet or Teams session at one time in your room? These are the parameters. This is the shape of your new classroom. So keep that in mind as you're learning. Hold on just a moment, Rachel. Yes, I will. Okay, so these are the presenters. And you're going to see what topic each one is going to cover here. We're going to start with Sandra. We're going to move to Jen, Monica, Mason, Marin, and Maribel. I did not intentionally choose people all with M names, but I guess that is what I did. And these presenters, number one, are just teachers like you. They very kindly agreed to do this to help you out. All of them have been teaching in a hybrid space for weeks or months, and they are from across the country. And so your first presenter, Sandra, is from Rhode Island. And Sandra, I am going to stop sharing my screen and pin you up there, okay?
All right, thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Sandra Mikulski. I teach 7th grade geography in North Kingstown, Rhode Island. And we have been full in person since day one. So what you are probably feeling now is what I was feeling back in August. So our school started back on September 14th, and we started in person every day. And our school system, I think the high school has shut down for 2 5-day periods. None of the elementary schools have shut down once, and the middle schools have not shut down either. That's not to say that teachers and students haven't tested COVID positive. They have, but our state was not going to shut down at all. The state did dictate to our school system that we had to shut down the week after the winter holidays, but that came from the governor. Otherwise, we have been fully in person. So I teach approximately 70 students in person. I don't have my own classroom. That was one of the troubleshooting systems that they put in place. We are in pods. So that means I have to rotate between 4 classrooms. I had to empty out almost all of my belongings in the classroom. That's another story. In order to create space and to kind of create a sterile environment. And then I have about 20 students at home. Our union negotiated that teachers could do one of 2 things. They could live stream, or they could record their lessons and then post their lessons, and then set up specific times during the day or the week to offer help sessions. That has really backfired because what happens is that you have some kids, they don't have any questions, they plow through the lessons, they'd have essentially no interaction with anybody at school. So that has really not been a successful way of teaching. I reached out to a friend of mine that was live streaming in Wisconsin, and she met with me and my team teachers prior to the start of school because she was a week ahead of us, and she was saying, this is how we did it. And today, this is essentially what I'm going to do for you, I hope, is to show you how I make it work. So as I said, I have 70 in person, and I live stream my lesson every day. What's nice about that is that when I'm done teaching in that class, I am done teaching. I don't have to worry about recording, editing, setting up extra meetings, or posting a video. But with it comes some complications. But all, to be quite honest, very manageable. So I'm going to move my device. I have my computer set up here with my whiteboard. It's at the front of the room, and my computer is attached to an HDMI cable. So my primary device, which is just a very inexpensive Chromebook, sits at the front of the classroom. And to be honest, I do most of my teaching right from this device. I open up my Google Meet at the start of every class. I have 4 classes, so I have 4 different meets. We have a nickname, so the kids know to pop in, and it's the same nickname, so there isn't a question of where's the link or any of that confusion. And as I said, I work primarily at the front of the classroom. I'm able to move around. I've had to work really hard at projecting my voice so that the kids at home can hear me. And I do a lot of sharing of my screen. What I will say, and granted this is 7th grade, I do not use the chat box. I mean, it's very rare because they just have way too much fun with that. So we do minimal activity in the chat box. And if I do, I set the parameters, and I'm very clear and specific about that. If I want to show a video or if I want to show a movie, our Wi-Fi can't support a Google Meet and me sharing a video or watching a movie without a lot of lag and glitches. So what I often will do, and again, I'm sorry, I'm going to pick up my device, but I have a music stand that I set up at the front of the class, and I will open up a second device, which I tend to use an iPad, but you could use another inexpensive Chromebook. And I just set my device, and actually that's what my iPad is on right now is a music stand. And I will open up the Meet on my second device, set it up on that music stand, and then they watch the video or the movie that I'm showing on the big screen. My students are in the same classroom for 5.5 hours a day. They have to stay in their seats. Group work it's not non-existent. I do a lot with breakout rooms and after school Google Meets that I help the kids with. But, you know, keeping that in mind, it offers some big challenges. Sometimes I will have all of my students at home and my kids in the classroom hop into the same meet. We do that quite regularly. We're really good at muting ourselves and turning our volumes really low. But we're able to make it work. And because they see my face and mostly my face every day, I work hard to bring outside people in. And when I do that, I will have my outside people in one meet, I'll have my at-home people in another meet, and again, I'll set it up like they're watching a movie. Here in Rhode Island, it's been really cold. We keep our windows open. It was below 20 degrees. Our windows were still cracked in every classroom. It's starting to warm up. We hit 60 today, so that's exciting. And I have to say, I swear by hula hoops outside. And this allows us to do group work outside in a safe way. So we haven't really been outside working in months, but we're hoping to starting this week. And hula hoops are a great way of creating that safe distance and yet working together. And I look forward to hearing people's questions in the breakout room. And I hope I've given you some ideas of how you can make it work. And I want you to know that it does work. And I've been doing it since September 14th. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Sandra. I'm going to remove the spotlight there, and I'm going to go back to sharing my screen. Thank you. I'm not sure what's visible now. Wait, let me try this again. Sorry. My screen. Okay, there we go. I was missing the little thing. Okay, thank you, Sandra. So when you go to your breakout rooms, if you want to hear more from Sandra about how to live stream your class or how she uses the hula hoops to take her class outside, you can go to her room. And so next up is Jen Diana, who is a choral teacher in New York State. And she is going to talk to you about how to set up your desk, how to narrate class for Zoomers and Roomers, and how to manage sound in the classroom and online, which I know is a big issue. So I will skip ahead to there. Jen, it's up to you.
Hi, everybody. Good evening from New York. I've been teaching in a concurrent or synchronous hybrid model since September. So I have both Roomers and Zoomers. I call them my in-person peeps and my virtual peeps at school. I don't know where I got that. All my kids are peeps. I have no idea why. I've shared on my next slide what my schedule actually looks like. Some of you are probably looking at something similar. It's the group 1 on Monday, Tuesday, group 2 Thursday, Friday. We have an A-day, B-day split. Wednesdays are all virtual. So like today was an A-day. I saw periods 1 through 4, and I saw my group 1 kids in person, and my group 2 kids and my all virtual kids were online. I don't know if we can we go ahead to the next slide?
Yeah.
On there.
Oops. There we go.
Oh, there we go. So I wanted to share on here how I take attendance, kind of part of how I set up my desk. I'm kind of crazy with attendance to begin with. So looking at this model, I thought, oh, good, even better. I'm sure I'll be getting phone calls from the office a lot more often. So I set up this situation here where I have my group 1 kids, my group 2 kids, and then my all virtual remote kids, so that when they're coming into my classroom or coming into our Microsoft Teams meet, I can just mark where they are. You can see I put IP next to one person's name there. I put V next to somebody else's name. That just means that when group 1 was supposed to be virtual, she was actually in person. On the other side of that, another student was supposed to be in person and she was actually virtual. So it gave me a really easy way to just mark kids as they come in. I do this for every class period. And I have like a little 3-page packet. I teach about 120 students total. It helps me keep track of who's where, when. especially if you have very large groups. So my biggest group is usually about 85. You can see that's a picture from 2019 of my classroom, what it would normally look like, about 85 students every day for chorus. There's couches in there. We have a little chill spot. Now I have groups of 40. So I'll have 20 kids in front of me and 20 kids online. And that just helps me organize them very easily. And when the office calls, I've got them all there and I can say where exactly they are. Because just because they're in your class doesn't necessarily mean they're in your class. And if Johnny is supposed to be there and he's online, he's still there, but he's still also absent because he's not in the building. And that's something that is probably going to be a little tricky at first, but this has worked really well for me. A couple things just to be aware of, like know your tech. All of you that have done virtual so far, God bless all of you. I honestly find the hybrid model to be slightly easier. Virtual kills me, probably because I teach something where I have to be able to hear them. So virtual, I find that very difficult. But if you know your tech well and you know how to switch between your screens, and you understand the different parts of Zoom or Meets or Teams, then you're already well on your way, because hybrid doesn't necessarily have to look any different. You're already really doing about 80% of the work that you have to do for a hybrid model. I don't change much to teach my class. I just alter the virtual model. My kids that are in class, they don't sign into Teams because I do use a second screen, but they are doing all of their work online still. And do the weird things that make setting up your classroom easier. So like if we go to the next slide, I posted a bunch of pictures here for y'all to see. This is what my room looks like now, no posters. I have cafeteria tables. The pictures in black are actually from my classroom. The pictures that have the blue outline are from the cafeteria. I can fit technically 50 students in my room. Usually there are upwards of 85. I can now fit 14 children in my room for chorus. So we have moved to the cafeteria. Kids are eating in the classrooms for lunch. For those of you that might be teaching chorus or band, ask me in the breakout room about how I set up my chairs. We worked long and hard and used lots of geometry, and can give you my best tips and tricks for that. But you can see I've got a couple different setups here. The picture all the way to the left, you can see probably the best. I have a Blue Yeti microphone that I'm using. I recommend these for anyone. It doesn't have to be a music teacher. I used to lend mine out to the science teachers all the time when they were recording videos just in regular school setting before pandemic school. My weird desk thing is that I have Velcroed some things to my computer. My laptop actually only has 2 USB ports. And we're lucky we have a really fantastic tech department, and they knew that that would happen. We would need to connect a lot of things. So you can see in that the picture of my laptop there's a strange black square on it. That's actually a very big multiple USB port thing that I have Velcroed to my computer, and all of my wires are all like wound up so that I can throw them all into a bag with my microphone and travel back and forth from my classroom to the cafeteria all day long. And I have a TV in my room. So those of you that have like a TV or a Prometheum board or a smart board or any kind of large second screen that your students can see, your kids don't need to join the Meet or anything, because that second screen is going to be what you use for the students. Your second screen's always for the kids. Just keep everything there. Don't change it back and forth. Your screen is for you. The second screen is extended for them, because once I share my screen, I know that my kids online are seeing the exact same thing that my kids in person are seeing. And if you look at that picture all the way to the left, I know it's tiny, but on the left hand of my screen there, I have the Teams meeting, and then I've actually split screened it with the presenter view of PowerPoint so that I can see the kids and I can see the slide that's being presented behind me on the TV, and I know what's up on the board that my kids in person and online can see. And then I can go back and forth. Also, if you're having to move rooms, just make sure that you know which tech you're going to use where. Like in my classroom, I use the setup that you can see there. I'm just using the TV and my computer and my microphone and my webcam. And then in the cafeteria, I actually have my soundboard that I would use in a normal choral setting and a large speaker. And so I sometimes have to connect into my TV to make sound come out for the kids. And then sometimes in the cafeteria, I have sound actually hooked into an auxiliary cord to my microphone. So if Meet or Zoom or anything yells at you, it's probably just because you didn't change the little icon at the bottom of your screen to tell it to come out of the right speaker. It's just little things like that, that if you just are one step ahead of your computer, you won't have any problems at all. Or you'll get massive amounts of feedback while being observed, and it'll be fine. You will not die of embarrassment, I promise you, because I did not. And one of the things, this last thing, my kids, I asked my kids, what is the biggest thing about hybrid learning that they wanted their teachers to know? And they said that when their teachers are suddenly silent or they don't say something, or they're talking to someone in the class, they feel really left out and really isolated. When you're all online, everyone's doing the same thing. Everyone's alone. But when there are kids in class and they can't hear them, they tend to kind of, just even self-isolate even more than they are. So narrate everything, tell them everything you're doing. If someone asks a question, repeat it back, little things like this. And you might feel like you're talking to yourself a little bit while you do it, but it will be 10 billion times better for the kids online. And they'll just feel more connected with you. And if you have a speaker like this, you can always just turn it on and put it right on top of your desk, and they'll hear everything. And I'll save the rest of it for the breakout room. So if anybody needs any more tech and everything, I will see you in a little bit.
Thank you, Jen. Okay, I just realized that I have an error in my slide deck where I don't go back and forth between the presenters. So I'm going to introduce the next presenter. The next presenter is Monica Adai. I think I said that right. I'm sorry if I didn't, because you told me at the beginning. And Monica is going to talk about how to plan synchronous and asynchronous classes, and also how to manage some basic biological needs, which I think is an important topic. So Monica, that is, oops, I'm sorry, Jen. There we go. You're up, Monica. Oh, sorry, Monica, hold on. Let me make sure that you are, I see you, but Phyllis, you are now the host. Can you please make Monica a co-host so that she can unmute herself? Or Phyllis, can you make me the host again? Oh, there you go. Monica, I think you're pinned and also able to unmute. Oh.
Hi, everyone. I hope you can hear me now. I'm Monica Day, and I teach French at Vintage High School in Napa, California. We have been hybrid since October. So we teach our Zoomers and our Roomers concurrently. Our schedule is super complex. I don't know if I want to spend a lot of time going over the schedule, but essentially we have an AM cohort and we have a PM cohort. So we have half our kids coming in the AM, which is 8 a.m. to 10:48 a.m. And then half our students coming in the PM, which is from about noon to 2:50. So, and then among those, there have been students that have chosen to stay online. So we have I have a maximum of 9 students in the classroom, and the rest are online. Hey, Jesse. and I have a maximum of 9 students, but there are other teachers that have up to 15 in the classroom. So I'm going to talk about 2 topics, which is synchronous, asynchronous lessons, and about biological needs like bathroom, food, water, so on and so forth. So my big tip for, because we're all coming from different scenarios, different setups, different schedules, everything varies so widely. I just want to say my big tip is to just stay calm and be consistent. And there are a million ideas out there that are amazing. Like today I'm seeing what Sandra and Jennifer shared, and I'm like, oh my God, that is so different than what I do, and that is amazing. I can imagine live streaming my teaching. So I think what you have to do is just stay calm and be consistent. And if from those million ideas you've chosen 2, then just stay consistent with them, because it takes time for all of us to get used to a certain system, and it takes time for students to get used to a certain system. So I think that calm and consistency is super important. Shane, can you hit a click to go on to my? Yes, thank you. So in the same strain, I want to say, keep the text simple. So I really suggest a maximum of 5 tools that work. There's a ton out there. Every night I go on Facebook and I see all these teacher groups that are using amazing things out there. And I have to pull myself back, because just to manage Concurrent in classroom, Roomers and the Zoomers online, I would keep tech really simple to a maximum of 5 tools. Now, the way it works with us is the students in the class do not Zoom in. So they're in the class, they do not Zoom in. Our bandwidth Wi-Fi cannot sustain all of them Zooming in, plus there's a lot of sound feedback. So the only students that are Zooming in are the students that are online. The other thing is we have a Promethean smartboard, and I have a MacBook, and that's all I have in my classroom for tech. So the Promethean the Promethean board is where I project my screen to my Zoomers, and so my roomers can see that screen as well. So I have 2 devices. There's my MacBook that this district has provided us, and then the Promethean smartboard that also the district provided us. I would also choose tech wisely to ensure student participation and accountability, which is my super important tip with world language. Is we are constantly doing all kinds of modes of communication. Student cameras are off. There's so much Wi-Fi. There's so much difference in what a student Wi-Fi at home, Wi-Fi in the classroom, how much load it can take. And I feel like one tool that I have chosen and I use consistently is Pear Deck, and that helps me monitor and ensure student participation online, and also to the ones in person. So that my in-person students also work on the Pear Deck at the same time, but they do not Zoom in. I hope that's kind of clear, and I'm happy to elaborate more in the breakout room. Can we continue?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. So my second topic is how to manage basic biological needs. So I was really, really nervous about this, about crowding in the bathrooms, because you know how high schoolers and teenagers can be in bathrooms. And our school has provided us a QR code. So students need to scan a QR code and head to the bathroom. And there is some monitoring by admin and support staff at the bathrooms. So I don't need to worry about it. To be honest, it has become a non-issue because our school day is just 8 to 10:48 in the morning, so about 3 hours, and really most kids do not even use the bathroom. So it's become a non-issue as such. The second thing, if we can just hit the click again, thank you, Shane. I have certain protocols where entering and leaving the class, just for everybody's feeling of comfort in terms of hygiene, is students that come in, they wipe the desks and the chairs, and when they leave, they wipe the desks and the chairs. So they get their own desk and their own chair. So they get that there's a double wiping that happens of desks and chairs. when they come in and when they leave, and they're super compliant. I was worried about that, but they're really, really compliant with that. So that has been amazing. I talked about the QR code for the bathroom, and then if they want, there's no food allowed in our classes at all. Our students pick up a lunch on the way home. So our AM kids pick up a lunch in the quad. It's a brown bag with the complete lunch. They pick up lunch as they go home. And then students that are coming in for the PM, they pick up their lunch. They bring it to my class, but they do not eat. If they want to drink water, then they just step out of the classroom. They cover, because they have to wear a mask in the classroom. So they step out and they have their water or whatever, and then they put on their mask and they come back in again. So those are really protocols that we have been keeping. We use, our district has provided us disinfectant wipes. There are 75% alcohol wipes, but we have a big tub of these right by the door. So the students use the wipes. Yes, the QR code leads to a Google form that they have to quickly fill out. I'm going to conclude with just telling you my 5 top tech tools. So if you can, and the hybrid teaching tips. So really quick, I'm going to conclude. My essential toolbox is Google Classroom. That's the LMS we are using. Pear Deck just keeps that accountability and participation from a warm up to exit ticket. Quizlet, because it's world language and we use vocabulary a lot. Number 4 is Edpuzzle. It has been a godsend to me for videos, because sometimes Wi-Fi can be bad in the classroom or elsewhere, and videos can be glitchy. So Edpuzzle has been amazing. And the last one is Flipgrid, where we have students talk and do interpersonal communication or presentational communication. Speaking is Flipgrid. And then finally, just for sanity, I have some hybrid teaching essentials. I just want to suggest, keep it simple, do what you can. Every person is different. Some people are more techie, some people are not. So whatever works, this is what I can do. Keep going. You will make mistakes. It's going to happen. You will lose control sometimes, managing tabs. So just keep going one day at a time. And give yourself grace. Like if you make a mistake, like there's a time when I didn't share my screen for 10 minutes. And then the students online were like, because I was talking so involved with the kids in the class, I forgot to share my screen. So yeah, I have to give myself grace, forgive myself and say, okay, tomorrow's another day. Next class is another class. So something like that. And then I think I have 2 more coming up. Yeah, don't take it personally. If kids go off the Zoom or they get frustrated, we're all in this together. We're all learning it. And I just suggest we don't take it personally, for our own sanity. And then the other big thing I do is I have it on my calendar. I schedule tech-free time every day. That's cooking or doing the dishes or walking my dog or something that I need to do. Thank you. And I'm happy to address any more questions during the breakout rooms. Thank you.
Thank you. And panelists, while you're not presenting, also, if you see questions in the chat that you feel like you can answer quickly, by all means, feel free to do that. I also want to say, I acknowledge that we are behind schedule, but what the panelists are saying, I think, is the thing that you're here for. So we're just going to keep going until we finish. Then we'll do the breakout rooms with the panelists. And if we don't have time for the separate breakout rooms with you all, then, I mean, in your grade level groups, then that's okay. Because I want you to be able to get as much as you can from them. All right, so our next panelist is Mason Meyer. Mason is a middle school choir teacher in Tallahassee. So we have now had someone from Rhode Island, someone from New York, someone from California, and now we are in Florida. So Mason, Rachel, I think you're the host now. If you could make it so Mason is able to unmute and also pin him, that would be great.
I think you can also do that, but I'll.
Oh, can I now? I'm sorry. Okay, Mason, you're up.
Pardon me, I've got a couple of geese that are just losing their minds.
Okay, that's all right.
Okay, awesome. Good evening, everyone. Yeah, I'm Mason. I teach middle school choir and general music in Tallahassee, Florida. I'm just going to be sharing some things that have really helped sort of solidify the first 10 to 15 minutes of every period for me, and how my process has helped me provide a comfortable experience and a predictable and reliable experience for my students who are in the room and the students who are digital learners. My hybrid teaching essentials include a quality microphone. I know that has been mentioned before, but I cannot stress enough how helpful it is to have a microphone that is not just in your computer or just in your device. I have the same microphone that the previous choir director had. And what I like about that is it has a setting where it allows you to change the actual polarity pattern that it collects sound from. And it has one where it'll just take sound from all directions. And depending on what activity I'm doing, I can put that on the rolling desk that I also have that's on my list. And I can put that in the middle of the room. And then what I can do is, even if my Zoomies can't see me at the moment, they can hear what's going on with the activity. And I have found that their engagement is more frequent and has more depth to it if they can just hear what's going on, regardless of where I am at in the room. I would also recommend having a second screen for your desk, especially a lot of us are going to be spending a lot more time behind our desks in a hybrid setting than you would if, pre-pandemic. So having that second screen can be really helpful. What I tend to do is I will have Zoom on one screen, and then I will have whatever activity it is that I am leading on the other screen. And that just makes it really easy. So I'm not clicking between windows. I'm not having to minimize and maximize my windows. I can just have everything right in front of me. Having a rolling table or a stand-up rolling desk is also really helpful. If any of you are band or orchestra teachers, my band colleague, she has a rolling desk that she'll put her laptop on when she's teaching ensemble. And this allows her to go and visit the clarinets, go and visit the flutes, go and visit whichever section she might be working with at that particular moment. And then it allows the students who are at home, who are also a part of that section and playing along with band at home, to hear what section is playing and have that same instructional experience, but on a virtual basis. And then of course, secret desk snacks. I recommend things like Oreos, Sour Patch Kids, whatever. If there's something that a handful of will help solve a little bit of stress from the previous period, buy it. Go to Costco, buy a lot of it. You're gonna need it. All right, next slide. So to just provide some context, these are my current parameters, what I've been working with since August 31st. My enrollment proportions have changed. At the beginning of the year, I had 70% of my students online and the remainder were in person, and that has shifted every time we've come to a new quarter. Our third quarter is ending next week, and we assume that another 70 to 100 students will be joining us, which will put our capacity at about 85% in person and the remainder online. We are on an A-day, B-day block style schedule, 3-period days with 105-minute periods. The weird constraint, but the one that makes a lot of sense, is that you can only sing, or in the case for band, you can only play for 30 minutes total in a period. And after that, you have to vacate the space to allow air to circulate. And then you can't actually play or sing again during that class period. So you can imagine if you are a fellow fine arts teacher and you're used to just writing rehearsal plans and being able to just get in, pick a piece or pick a page and go, that additional 75 minutes has been my biggest challenge for how and what to teach, because I've really had to dig deep into my general music teaching toolbox to figure out how to provide a fulfilling and educative experience while working with parts of my area that aren't necessarily my strong suit. And my total schedule includes 1 section of advanced ladies, 2 sections of beginner chorus, and 2 sections of music production and general music. All right, next slide. So when your bell rings and your students begin to make their way into your Zoom room or into your classroom or whatever your parameters may be, the first thing you're going to want to do, no matter what, is follow your district and school site guidelines for in-person students that are entering the classroom. For me, this includes a temperature check. I have a contactless infrared thermometer that I use for every student when they enter the room. We have big 1 gallon pump hand sanitizers that they get a temperature check. Everybody gets a little bit of hand sanitizer. For you, that might look like handing a wipe or having students grab a sanitizing wipe to go do their desk in their chair. It might look like might include a mask check, etc. One thing I would recommend that you do, and I would imagine most districts will require this, but take a detailed seating chart in case you don't have just a preset one, depending on what your approach is to seating charts. My school has been very, very strict when it comes to the enforcement of our COVID guidelines, but we have had, I think, a total of 12 cases since August between staff and students. And 2 of those, 1 exposure and 1 positive case actually came through my room, and I was able to just go to Canva, which is where I design my seating charts, print those out, hand them to my AP, and he was able to give those to our health department. And contact tracing was really, really simple because the seating chart was up to date, and they were able to make the phone calls that they needed to make. Next slide. So I have found, and I think if you've taught before, then you know this too, but I made the entire first quarter of my school year with the hybrid model just about establishing predictable habits for all of my students, whether they were online or face-to-face, for that first 10 to 15 minutes of class. This included always having my bell ringer or warm-up activity posted and published in, we use Canvas for our LMS, but whatever your LMS might be, just having that open and ready to go. And then I recommend just having a preset time where your students know, okay, my last period of the day starts at 1:40. They know that we are going to look at or review whatever the bell work was at 1:55. And that just makes that predictable and reliable for them. This is the time, of course, to double check with students for any sort of missing materials, whether that be a Chromebook or any device, a charger, an extra mask, or any material specific to your class. One thing that I have had to allow myself to get used to this year is that everything takes about twice as much time to take care of in this setting for me. And that's just sort of a symptom of the constraints that are applied to in-person learning, but also just the really, really weird, not normal, new normal for being a virtual student. You know, in the past, if someone had forgotten something and mentioned it when we were starting an activity, wasn't really a big deal. We can take care of it when we need to take care of it. But I've learned the lesson now. If a student is missing a charger, I want to know about that at the very beginning of class so that we can get a charger in that Chromebook. Their Chromebook will turn on. They can get started on the bell work so that they aren't doing the bell work when I'm reviewing the bell work, or that they aren't behind when we start the first activity. So you will probably find that you have a mental checklist that you go through at the top of the period before you even get to touch content or reinforcement work at the top of your period. It's and it's a good idea as you are entering into a new medium to display like that game plan for the first 15 minutes or first 10 minutes for all students in the first couple of weeks. Next slide. As far as your digital students, if you've got students who are online, of course, as soon as the ending bell for the previous period begins, you're going to want to go to that next class, hit Zoom, hit Teams, whatever it might be, click go. I have assigned an in-person student who comes from me just down the hall. He comes in, it's not even 10 seconds after the bell rings, and he is my doorman. He stands at my rolling desk where my laptop is, and he just keeps an eye on the Zoom, and he clicks admit. And sometimes he stands there like this because he likes to be the bouncer for the Zoom room. But I did that because in the first month of teaching, I began 2 separate lessons with like 3 to 8 kids still in the waiting room. And I realized that that's not good. Should not let that happen again. So I delegated that, and I found that those couple instances happened because there was a 7th grade size fire with someone at the top of the period, and then my attention was taken away from Zoom, which at the time was still something I was not used to paying any significant attention to. And I had 3 to 5 students who felt left out of the beginning of the lesson. So that is something you can do. I try to greet all students as they enter the digital classroom by name, and I do this not only just to reinforce the idea that while they are at home, they are part of our class, but it is my way to cue them that you have been noticed, you have been acknowledged. I know that you are here. And then, in line with our class expectations, I expect that since you're here, you're going to engage to the best of your ability for whatever the lesson might be that day. And something I've toyed with, but don't do often, is that I turn, for my Zoomies, they have a discussion or topic or question to work on together in Zoom. And then I will pose I'll juxtapose a different question or maybe the same question, and then we will sort of dovetail into the lesson for the day with those two group discussions. I saw someone ask whether or not cameras have to be on. Your district policy is going to differ just district to district. We require students to have cameras on during the attendance period, which is the first 5 minutes of class for being on time or counted present, and then the first half an hour of class for being counted as just tardy. So what that means is when the bell rings, 5 minutes into class, I'll say, okay, class, I'm going to take attendance right now. And then if you were to watch my Zoom, it's amazing. It's like a cascade of cameras that come on. And then when they hear me say their name, when I acknowledge that they are present in Zoom, they most of them turn their cameras back off. I saw someone ask, what do you do if they don't turn on their camera? I would be happy to sort of address some of those more nuanced questions in a breakout room. I'm going to go ahead and just hit the next slide, though. Here's an example of an agenda slide. The previous slide noted that I like to put up the plan for the day. And what I'll do is I use Canva a lot because it's free. And so I will download this as a PNG file, and then I will upload it to my Zoom and use it as a virtual background. And then what I'll do is I'll take a sticky note, I'll cover my camera so that Zoom's not trying to make a green screen. And this allows me to display it so that it's facing the right orientation to be read for students at home and students in the room. And this is just basically delegating to technology, any sort of communication that might get lost in communication, if you will. All right, got one more slide. And then I recommend engaging in some sort of calming and focusing activity as one entire class. So students that are online will do this alongside us in the room. This was something that was new to me when I started teaching this year. The idea of a brain smart start comes from the disciplinary model called conscious discipline. There's a series of books that talks about this, and it's basically the idea that students need to be in an executive brain state in order to actually actively engage in the learning process. And if they're in a survival state or if they're in a high anxiety state, you can't even really consider beginning the learning process until you alleviate their anxiety and bring them into a focused executive state where they feel safe. So we will do a brain smart start, which is 4 steps. The first step is unite. Second step is connect. Third step is disengage from stress. And the fourth step is commit to a successful period. I'm not going to give anything too specific because, again, your parameters in your classroom are going to be different from mine. Connection is the idea that you have a class-specific thing that you give to each other. So different classes may have different hand signs for greetings. In a world where you could shake hands, it could be a special handshake sequence or something like that. But that's something that you do every time a student enters the room or logs in. You can do that with them. The unite step includes doing some sort of class-wide activity. This could be a class song. You could take a song that everybody knows the melody to and adjust the lyrics to fit your classroom or your content area, sing it together. It could include a stretching sequence or something like that. The idea is that you're all engaging in the same activity simultaneously, and it helps to build in some sort of aspect or maintained eye contact. That's prolonged eye contact for 3 to 5 seconds is also a point for students because that helps them to unite and bring them together as a unit. Thirdly, we'll do some sort of breathing activity or a 3-minute meditation. There are a lot of free apps that you can find or websites or YouTube videos where you can just engage in some sort of physiological calming activity. They've just come in from the hallway. They're all sorts of riled up. They don't know what's coming. But I have found that if I just take those 5 minutes to do some sort of mindfulness breathing activity, at the end of those 5 minutes, not only are my students in a more relaxed and willing to engage brain state, but I am in a more relaxed and ready to teach brain state. And that has been one of the bigger challenges this year is that bell rings, those students come in, and part of me is like, okay, but why? And then lastly, we'll do a sort of spoken commitment that focuses on some aspect of whatever your learning objective is for that lesson or that activity. An example, I commit to trying something new today. No matter how well I do, I know that I am learning. And what we have found is that students hearing themselves, students hearing each other make that commitment out loud to one another, or reading it having been typed into the chat box on Zoom. They feel accountable to themselves, they feel accountable to their peers, and I'm much less likely to encounter disruptions during a lesson after we've done, a really short 15-second commitment as a class.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much. That was great. Somebody posted in the chat that they wish that this was like publicized so that people who are not teaching could see how much work you all are doing just to manage like a 30 or 45-minute session with their students, which I think is really true. I'm cognizant of the time, but I think that the panelist presentations are still useful to you all. And so we're going to keep going, and I'll give you still some time to talk with them. Okay, so our next presenter is Maren Anderson. She is currently teaching in Minnesota.
All right. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Can you hear me, Shane?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, great. Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Maren Anderson. I'm the PK-12 Science Chair at the Blake School in Minneapolis. We are a 3-division school, as you see, and so we have actually 3 campuses, one of which has a joint middle school and lower school. So I made sure to kind of take in what I'm able to share with you today that goes across all 3 divisions. So everything I'm going to say in the next 3 to 4 minutes, Shane, I'll try to keep this somewhat short, especially because not everyone teaches science here, but I think there's a lot of good lessons learned that we've done in the science labs that I think that are pertinent to all other classroom teachers as well. And I won't repeat anything that anyone's already said. So I do have my hybrid teaching essentials up there. I'm going to go ahead and let you read each through those because I'm going to That's okay. I'm going to talk a little bit how do we utilize those in each of the pieces I'll talk about in a second. I just wanted to let you know we've been under 3 different hybrid models and 2 different remote learning models since the last week of August. We have done it all. We have had Zoomers and Roomers. We've had asynchronous and synchronous. We've had 30-minute classes, 40-minute classes, 55-minute classes, and 70-minute classes where we are right now. And we are returning to full-time in person on April 19th, 2 weeks after our spring break ends. So I'm happy to answer really any question you possibly have about any type of hybrid learning schedule in our breakout room. Next slide, please. So the way I wanted to talk a little bit today is basically how to get set up in person. Your on-campus learners are very important, especially on lab days, because they're the ones that are physically going to be utilizing the space, and you want to make sure they're set up in the appropriate manner. And so I'll talk about what you do with the Zoomers just after this. And so the big thing here is if you sanitize the kids as they come into the room and you know that your equipment is sanitized, there is a very little chance for transmission as long as the kids keep their masks on. We are a mask mandated school and the kids have been pretty good about it. I've never had to ask one of my students to put their mask back on. And so as they enter the classroom, they will sanitize right as they come in. And then right before we start a lab, they will actually wash hands with soap and water in one of our sinks in the classroom. And then before they leave at the end of the day or at the end of the period, they're going to sanitize their hands on the way out as well, washing hands anytime they utilize something that they need to. You want to sterilize equipment as you can. This is one thing that we went really hardcore on at the very beginning, and it's just not always possible, especially with passing periods or multiple lab setups. So the way that we got around this was actually setting up a double set of our lab materials, if possible, by using bins and trays and disposable equipment when we could. With them sanitizing and using that kind of medical scrub in, scrub out technique, you're really limiting the possibility of germs kind of passing through anything that they're holding in their hands. And so by using those bins and trays, by having a wash bin in the sink near you, you're actually reducing a lot of transmission possibilities. We have, like I said, been open since August. Across all 3 divisions, we've only had 6 cases in our entire community, and they've been all outside cases, and all exposures have not resulted in a COVID positive case on campus. I will say that less is more when you're planning. Everything takes more time right now because you're focusing so heavily on cleaning and sanitizing. And so where you can, utilize demos, utilize demo labs, utilize your ed tech, things like Loom and Edpuzzle, Pear Deck, and Flipgrid. That will really engage those Zoom learners. Another thing that's really helped with these Zoom learners, in addition to making sure that you don't run out of time with these different time constraints and different cleaning strategies, is to have students take photos with their own device or their phone as soon as a result comes up in their lab, so that they're able to make sure that they can take something with them if they do need to finish lab at home. Next slide, please. For our Zoomers, it's really important here, as everyone's already said, to create that ritual of making sure that you greet them on the way in. Any lab day, the immediate thing that the students are going to do on campus is to have one person at a lab table join your Zoom. And that way, when you are ready to start the lab, you actually create breakout rooms. And so you're going to pre-assign your Zoomers with your roomers, and you make sure to integrate at least 2 students to each lab group, so that there's a couple of Zoomers that are able to communicate with one another or ask questions. And then you make sure that you have 2 or 3 students working together in a lab group, and that they can actually communicate with one another. This is a great opportunity to really develop your on-campus learners or your roomers to really work on those observation skills, because like someone mentioned before, the more you ask them to narrate what's going on, the more integrated your Zoomers are going to feel. I use Google Docs in all of my labs, and even at the lower school level, they have a Google Doc where the students can actually enter in data real time. And so that way your roomers are able to actually focus on, I timed myself, Shane, for you, to make sure that they're actually following along with what kind of analysis that they're doing, and then making sure that they actually have some data that they're looking at, even if they can't physically touch it. Next slide, please. So additional tools I have on here, and I can talk a lot more about additional tools we might use in the classroom. We have a kind of zoom angle lens in the back of all of our classrooms that I would say 75% of us have stopped using because the bandwidth for being able to zoom and work with a couple other apps and things like that in addition to the classroom is not great. But what it does help with is that if students are able to see kind of the overall layout of the classroom as you're starting with the lab, they do feel a little bit more engaged and feel more in the lab. The things that have really, really helped kind of create that connectedness with what's going on in the experiments are these little, the crane neck phone and tablet holders. They're like $10 on Amazon, and we've had a million different models, and we have them set up on as many desks as possible so that when we do have our Zoomers come in, we can actually crane the thing to look at the experiment, and then the students can kind of communicate what is going on in the lab. Dot cams also work, camera attachments to microscopes if you're able to. Camera attachments can range from fairly cheap to really expensive, but you can find ones that work pretty well. And I've worked a dot cam to actually hook up to one of our microscopes to see through and actually be able to see the slides, as you can see in this little animation I put in here. And then of course, not every lab works well in this setting. And so sometimes what we've done is to actually choose an interactive where there's a lab at home or a demo at home where the students actually work in a remote group together. So let's say I have 20 kids remote and they're able to actually join breakout rooms, do the interactive together. So they're doing a lab, and then have my students in person doing a lab that they just couldn't necessarily get the hang of in that Zoomer-roomer situation. So there's lots of ways around this. It's about finding what tech works for you, but it is as basic as getting that phone crane or that phone holder or tablet holder in a dot cam can really expand the possibilities you have with your students. And I'm going to end there. I have lots of other things I can offer in the breakout room, but I want to make sure that we're paying attention to time.
Thank you. I think it just is an indication of exactly how much there is to be done and to figure out that everyone has more to say than can be said in a few minutes. So our final presenter is Maribel, who is also from California and is a social studies teacher. And so I'm going to spotlight you and make sure. Can you unmute yourself? Oh, there we go. Great, we can hear you.
Okay. So hi, my name is Maribel Rosendo Servin. I'm a history teacher, currently teaching ethnic studies in Manteca Unified District, East Union High School, and we started the hybrid model in November, and we have a Schedule A and a Schedule B, and then all students are distance on Wednesdays. And I will say that one of the biggest takeaways of this experience is checking in on students as they're coming into class, including myself, right? Recognizing that we are in a pandemic and still in a pandemic, students are feeling anxious. I live, or where I teach, our community was impacted heavily by COVID-19. And so we have students who are coming in feeling anxious, right? Knowing that family members have been hospitalized, certain family members have been lost. And for me, as a history teacher, social science teacher, and just teacher in general, I recognized that the most important thing was to recognize their humanity during this time, right? And then using my content with ethnic studies to push out, those first, I think another colleague mentioned those first 10 minutes, taking the time to create mindfulness practices that develop relationships over time. So building class community, even if you have had them online for a period of time, what really helped me was that I took those first 2 weeks of hybrid model to really build those relationships. So I continued, I kind of paused on going into certain concepts and really focused on building that community. At the beginning of every class, I do check-ins, and they have to say how they're feeling, right? Like, how are you doing today? How is it going? And I read their names quite literally, and I have them correct me as well if I'm not pronouncing their names. And I also have the students in person tell me, right, the answer to that question, just so that they're not quiet, and type it in, and that's it. That's all they have to do. And so I do literally try to recognize not only virtually, but then also pause and recognize those in person. So that has been like really critical. In a survey that I've taken or have students do, I ask them, give me feedback, and that the check-ins has been one of the things that they've mentioned has made them feel good, or make them feel welcome, or make them feel safe. And then for me, it kind of helps me monitor like where they're at in terms of, do I have to shift a little bit in terms of concepts or topics, depending on the energy in the space. So that has gone a long way. And then checkouts, I have to always remind them that they need to do at least one thing that brings them joy to them. And so they have to name it. And so we practice that in every checkout that we do at the end of class. They have to give me one thing that you're going to do today, right, that will bring you joy to yourself, right, and or to others around you. I do structure 3 forms of building student relationships. We do have students, because again, like I mentioned, our community was heavily impacted like other communities around the States, where we had students go online, back to online learning. So I have, had students that haven't done the hybrid model, or that they did do a hybrid and then they went back online. We do have, I will say, a list of students that are in quarantine. So definitely, as you are organizing and structuring your class, in terms of the, how you're thinking about engaging students personally, individually, right, based on their personal needs. Just know that it might shift and change, right, as they may or may not, right, go into quarantine. So there's 3 ways that I build student relationships that has gone a long way that I wish I could have done in November when I started. And I start with 1, a mental health check-in. This kind of gives me an idea of how they're feeling about it, right? And again, like I mentioned, some of them may have had COVID and they share with me that and the anxiety that they are going through, and or if they're really overwhelmed and stressed. So that keeps on coming up a lot. I do individual check-ins, and I think something that I've learned during this time that I will not stop doing is using we use Teams, the Microsoft Teams, and what I've taken the time to do is to check in on each individual student. And I know that takes time, but I think it has been really worth it. I do it, try to do it twice in a semester, where 1, I do like a quick check-in message, like, how are you doing? Before I ask them about the work, right? Because I want to make sure that they know, like, first and foremost, I want you to be okay. And then I ask them, like, tell me how's it going? And I do give them credit for answering back. And if I notice they don't respond, and it's an individual connection, right, through the Teams chat. If they don't respond, that's when I get worried, and that's when I move on to the next step in calling home just to check in. And then I also have done individual conferences where I call them through the Teams video individually. And that has also been very helpful, because especially with the students that I've never, seen or never been in the classroom and or always keep their camera off, that has gone a long way for me to build a relationship with them. Even if, again, they've never turned on their camera, they will turn it on for that specific meeting with me. And then another one that, another feedback that I ask from them is course feedback, right? So I tell them, like, I come in thinking that, I came up with this great idea, it's going to be engaging, they're going to like it, and then I try it, and maybe they don't like it. Maybe it was too complicated. I know I've had kids mention, like, there's too many tabs that I have to go through, or it gets confusing, right? And in my mind, I thought I kept it simple. I also ask for feedback from students. I really pay attention to the feedback that I receive from students who might have IEP, right, or have different abilities in terms of their learning, and then also from my students who are English learners. So throughout these 3 ways of building relationship, I get to kind of recognize what supports I need to be able to provide. And what that also does is that they're more willing to reach out. So I've really appreciated that students send me messages when they don't get it and they feel comfortable doing it. And when they don't, I make sure I reach out if I haven't heard from them. And then just the last piece is the student engagement and classroom discussions. I realized that if I don't build the top 3 ways of building student relationships in my classroom, the classroom discussions become very minimal. And or if I put them into breakout rooms, something that they've told me is that we are unwilling to unmute if we don't know people, which is really interesting. And I do structure it with the hybrid model, like at the same time, so students in the class get to engage with students online. We do have laptops that are checked out to every student, so I just ask them to keep their mics on though, but they are able to communicate back and forth with each other. And something that I realized within that, because I do have students who are English learners students who have IEPs. Cooperative learning strategies have gone a long way, where you build in scaffolds, you make it interconnected, right? Interdependent, and you structure it not too complex, but in a way that they are able to be successful. So I've done virtual Socratic seminars, and again, like I've had to assign specific roles, make sure that they have graphic organizers, or using the sticky, the Jamboard has been one of the tools that I kept consistent, or the Padlet. And then for English learners, I'm able to communicate with them in the chat, even if they're in person, and or with students with IEP, I'm able to connect with them through the Teams chat just to check in to see if they have any questions. And knowing that, they might be shy to ask it in front of the class. Another feedback that students have mentioned that they do have classes that are hybrid, and once they've come in, they realize that it isn't any different than online. So that's something that I've really personally made it a point that if you are in class, that I'm going to create an experience in the classroom for both students who are in person and online. Because we do have, and by all means, like much respect and love to our teachers and the decisions that they make during this time. But students do feel the energy from teachers, is what they said. We do have teachers who prefer to teach from the class and the students facing the opposite way. And so that makes it less engaging for students to engage with teachers. So the more you make yourself present is one of my biggest recommendations to you, because the students will gravitate and engage with you as you build and recognize their humanity in this time and in this process.
Thank you. I really appreciate what you added there. I'm happy that we finished out with two really strong sets of points about connecting with students and social emotional learning. So we've blown our schedule, which is fine. Let's just ignore this. I'm gonna stop sharing